Arrow Season 5, Episode 22, Missing. Now, with this week having quite a few season finales, that's why this review is actually so late. This is the episode leading into the season finale for next week, which is pretty much for all the DC shows, outside of course, Legends of Tomorrow, which ended, I think, like 2 months ago. All the DC shows are kind of going into their final episodes, including even Gotham on Fox. And this was definitely an awesome episode for Arrow. I think they did a great job. Of course, going from the last episode, things kind of start off as like, all right, it's kind of time to celebrate a little bit extra. Everybody's having fun. It's actually Oliver's birthday, which I thought was pretty interesting. And of course, it comes up again, like, man, where the heck is Renee? And I mentioned during my review, I was like, it's probably going to be, considering, the promo kind of told us what was happening during the episode, we're probably going to find out that Renee was the first person that was kidnapped. And that's exactly what ends up happening. And the second person ended up being kidnapped is actually Dinah. And I like the way that that played out, because even with everything that happened in this episode, with everyone being kidnapped, one by one, the two characters that we didn't see, being Renee and Dinah, we still don't end up seeing them until the season finale, because there's the section in the promo where Black Siren was fighting against Dinah, and they like scream at each other and then fly back. But we still don't see her, and we still don't see Renee, so we don't exactly know what the plan is. Like, everyone else is captured and chained up all together, and then for whatever reason, the two of them are still left out. That could have just been, a production deal where they just weren't there for that day, because it's like, why put them in, like, only the last scene? So, that could have been the reason that they decided to do that, but it's just interesting. Like, okay, well, the two of them, having been the first two captured, they've, most likely been on the island the longest. What other stuff are we going to see as far as, where they've been held captive and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see how things play out when the team officially reunites with the two of them. So that I'm looking forward to. But, things constantly going through this episode, it was entertaining. Oliver is trying to protect the people that he cares about. They realize after Dinah is kidnapped, it's like, okay, well, it's safe to assume that with us, not being able to find Renee, that's why he was kidnapped. And so, of course, things continue to get bad, because Curtis was kidnapped when he went to find Dinah, so he gets kidnapped. And so Thea and Lance are kind of teamed up. They end up being kidnapped by, of course, Black Siren, as I mentioned, and Evelyn, who every time she shows up, I swear I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot she was in this show, because it's always like every couple of weeks, I'm like, oh yeah, because she's not, she's not a part of the team, and she's not really out in the field, working with Chase. It's kind of like at random she shows up, and I always forget. I'm like, oh yeah, he's not working by himself. So, of course, that ends up happening, and they're working, of course, helping Chase out, on the outside, as well as working with the League of Assassins. We don't actually see Talia al Ghul in this episode, but of course, it is the League of Assassins. So, it was definitely awesome that they made a bit of a comeback in this episode, and we kind of just have the heroes winning pretty much the whole episode. Everybody keeps getting kidnapped. The plan was, for Diggle and Felicity to leave the city, and that way Oliver would be able to just focus on himself, because he lost everybody else. So that's their plan, and then unfortunately that is, of course, what was expected. So they end up being ambushed and they get captured. And around this time, that's when, like, the alternate team comes into play, which I thought was super awesome, especially, of course, when we get to the end of the episode. But that's when the alternate team-ups start to come into play, because we have Oliver in, the Arrow cave by himself, and so he's walking around, and then they have, like, the random camera, and it's kind of shaky, and it's, it's someone in the rafters, and every time they switched to it, they kept changing the tune of the music, which it just made me laugh after, like, the second time. But it's like, alright, somebody's sneaking in, and they drop down, and so Oliver knows that he's, being watched. So he throws the arrow behind him, and it ends up being Malcolm Merlyn. So that I thought was cool. It's like, alright, Malcolm Merlyn has made his return. His whole thing is, I want to save my daughter. That's the only reason he ever seems to show up, is like either, somebody pissed him off, or he wants to save Thea, or a combination of the two. It's typically, two things in one. But he comes back and is like, hey, I know this dude is freaking crazy. I know he's working with Talia al Ghul. I want to save my daughter, because they're both insane, and they're both, fairly tough. So I wanted to do whatever it takes to save Thea. They work through, some of their issues, and Oliver's like, we're not going to do things the way that you want to do them. And so, of course, they somewhat break out for, like, I think it was maybe like 5, almost 10 minutes. And that's when Oliver gets to, like, that last moment where he's like, the whole episode he's constantly going to Chase, and it's like, I'm not gonna do this. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I care about them, but I'm not gonna let that happen. And of course, when it gets to the very end, we get the scene from the promo where he's like, I think you're gonna be getting a phone call, and I just assumed it's gonna be the next person. I don't believe at this point he knew that Thea and Lance had been kidnapped already, because they were supposed to be in like the safe zone, but he got that call and it ends up being his son. And of course he flips out. So he goes out and he's like, I gotta chase the truck down. And then some, Malcolm shows up and is like, I figured he took your son because we kind of think alike. So, they have a pretty badass scene. The part where they're going through and taking out all the guards and stuff to try to get to Chase, it was actually a really great sequence. Like, it was one of those things where I'm like, this is why I like this show, because sometimes, just every once in a while, they do like an action sequence that's just really, really well done. And I think this is definitely one of them. So I love that sequence where they're just going down, they're taking people out left and right, just shooting arrows off. Merlin ends up guarding Oliver as he goes for a chase. And I just thought it was a really well done action sequence. And of course, they end up getting to him, and the whole thing is like, well, it's too late now. Like, you knew the deal and you kind of let it fall to the wayside. It's too late. But he decides to take off, and so of course that's when they really have to team up. And Oliver's like, well, it can't just be the two of us. So he decides to bring in Nissa Al Ghul, which I thought was very cool that they brought her back. Bit of an issue between her and Malcolm Merlin, which I thought was a nice little moment, because Merlin's kind of that super cocky character, and Oliver was kind of saying it to him, was like, I need that cocky person who can like kind of keep himself in check for what's about to happen. He's like, who'd you contact? And so, of course, he's pissed off because of just all the issues. And she totally got him. It was super funny because she looks at Oliver. I forgot that they were married, so she's like, your husband. And then he instantly, Merlin instantly says no. And she just looks at him and she's like, Mr. Merlin, I assume you still have no title. And it just made him even more pissed, and it just made it funnier to me. So I love that moment where they teamed up. And it was super cool. We have the main team. Everyone's been captured. Everyone's back only in you. And by the end of the episode, they're all freaking out. Like, Oliver can't do things by himself. And it's like, all right, well, he's already got his two team members, his alternate team. And then it cuts to Oliver already on the island, by the way, because I didn't expect him to actually be there. But, like, once they showed the hatch, I assumed it was going to be Chase going down, like, hey, I think Oliver's coming here, and I think you and I might both have a little bit of revenge against this guy. I thought it was honestly going to be Chase, and then Oliver came down, and I was like, holy crap, this is how they have Slade come back. Because I heard that he was supposed to be coming back, and I thought he was the one taking people out at first. I thought maybe Chase went to him, and like, kind of let him free, just like I said, the revenge thing. It starts off with it being Slade, and it's, we assume it's the League of Assassins because we never see anyone, but then it's revealed that it ends up being Slade or something. It was kind of how I thought it was going to play out, because I knew he was supposed to show up somewhere. And the way they did it was way cooler, because him working with Oliver just makes it even cooler. So we have Oliver teaming up with pretty much all of his villains, like everyone that he's ever fought against, and pretty much still fights against, because the only person that he's kind of actually solved issues with is Nissa. Like, she's the only person. Malcolm constantly fighting with him. Every time he comes back, they just end up fighting. Even when they have the same goal, Malcolm Merlin finds some way to become a villain no matter what. So, he's still technically a villain, and of course Slade has only returned like one true time, and it was to be a villain. So every time he's there, he's a bad guy. So it's just a really cool way to do it. I'm excited for the finale. I think what they did with the flashbacks was actually very cool as well. We got some pretty cool callbacks there. We see, a couple people. We don't actually see Shadow show up as a Vision, which I thought was interesting, because I thought it would kind of go down the line where it was going to be, I forgot Shadow's father's name, but I thought it was going to be him, and then it would be Shadow, and then, the other characters would start to show up. But after her father, he thinks about Shadow and stuff like that, and it's mostly, her father saying you let her die. So he still thinks about it, it's just not her as a Vision, which I guess he already had that moment, but that wasn't in the flashback. So I like the way they did that. And of course, there's no real threat to Oliver killing himself, but it was still cool. Like, I like the way they did that, where it starts off and it's like, how is this going to work? And it's Oliver who's been tortured and hit with arrows and cut and this and that, and he, injects him with this drug, and it's basically a drug that kind of shows him that initial pain that he felt in those horrible memories are still in there. Like, they're almost repressed at this point. But, he touches a scar and we see the first time that he was, hit with an arrow, or when he was whipped, or when he's been stabbed through. And I was like, that's actually a very cool concept. And I just thought it was a really cool idea. And it's meant to kind of torture him into killing himself because it's some of the darkest moments that he's ever experienced and how he screwed up in some of those moments. So I thought it was a cool way to do the flashbacks. But of course, he overcomes his issues. He shoots the cage open. And so now he's going out to fight against Kovar. And I'm very excited for where we're headed. Because this is something I mentioned before. When Kovar first showed up, I was like, I knew we weren't at the end of the 7 years. And they referenced it. I couldn't remember how long it had been. I thought it was like around 3 or 4. But it's been 5 years because they do like a little recap in this episode. I was like, okay, so it's been 5 years. He's still got 2 more years to go. Maybe 2 and some change, depending on the exact day and month or whatever. But I was like, all right, so he's still got 2 years worth of flashbacks. Where does he go after this? Like, I'm just so curious. Like, how in the world does this end up playing out? I am very curious if he's going to actually end up killing Kovar because, like I mentioned before, when we thought he died and he was going to come back, I assumed that was going to be how Oliver ended up kind of getting back into, good terms with the Prophet. I was like, okay, they break up in, the last time they showed up, they broke up. And then Kovar would come back and it's like, surprise, I haven't been dead. I've just been kind of building up whatever for like 10 years, I guess. I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be 10 years. It would only be, I guess it would be about almost 5 years since that happened. So I was like, all right, well, that's what I assumed was going to happen. So it just makes me wonder if he's actually going to end up killing him in the flashback or if he's going to like kill him again. And then we do actually see him show up in the next season and he's, how Oliver ends up getting back in good graces with the Prophet and stuff. So I'm curious how that might play out in the finale, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. We get to see, they have a pretty interesting moment when the team's flying, our alternate team is flying to Lian-Yu. And this actually talks about how when she was younger, her dad told her to, go to the island, and that's how she ended up finding Sarah. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. Just a kind of random reference, like that's how, Sarah ended up with the League of Assassins. So that was definitely a cool little moment, but definitely a great episode. They put off some pretty cool surprises as far as bringing in these older characters to be, the alternate team for the finale episode to save the original team. Black Siren coming in. I kind of skipped over that for this episode, but her coming in gives me a bit of hope. There's one moment, and I don't know how much it really means for what they're going to do with her in the future, because it's obviously an easy way to bring back an actress, but they did make it seem for sure like Black Siren had some issues with hurting Lance because that was still her father. And if there is one thing that will turn either a hero into a villain or a villain into a hero, it's parents. It's either dead parents or distant parents, and it's DC, so everybody's got one of the two or both, distant and then dead. But they definitely made it seem like she had some real issues hurting Lance. So it does make me wonder, like every little step constantly seems to be her getting closer and closer to being a hero. And I'm like, I feel like that might be what they're leading towards. Although it's really hard to say at this point because now we have Dinah as Black Canary. So it's like, it's impossible to tell what they're trying to do with it. So I don't really know just yet. But I'm like, I don't know. That seemed like something that may or may not have some relevance. Maybe it'll help in like, it'll be like that last minute switch sort of thing where the villain that has an issue, it won't be for anyone except for Lance. But it'll be like, I don't want him to die, so maybe she'll turn on the villains at like the last minute and help the team out. But I'm excited to see where they take that. It was a minor thing, but it seemed important enough, especially considering what they've done with her character. Like the last time she showed up, that was the whole point, was Oliver trying to convince her to be, a good person and be the person that they knew she was from their Earth. So it's like, I feel like that's all they've done with that character since introducing her to Arrow, at least. So I'm like, all right, let's see what's happening here with this. And it seemed like they were kind of just adding on that just like in a small bit, but it still seemed like they were adding to her becoming more and more of a hero compared to being, Black Siren, the villain. So we'll see how that takes place. I don't think that'll have a big, effect on the actual finale, or at least it won't be a big focus. It could have an effect if it is that last minute, from evil to good sort of switch. But as far as being the focus, I don't think that'll be the case considering it's the finale. And plus we have freaking Slade and Oliver teaming up. That should be like 100% of the focus. But looking forward to it. I'm actually even excited for how things are going to end out for the flashback. So all around, I'm excited for where we're headed for this last episode. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and of course, with us going into the finale, I just want to know your theories for what's going to happen in the finale, and of course, I just want to know what you guys want to see from the finale, because we already got some cool stuff leading into it with 3 awesome characters, joining Oliver. They are some of my favorite characters in the show, admittedly. Merlin, I thought, I liked him more when he was just the random Arrow character before we knew who the heck he was. And that was just because I think it was because he was like the first big bad villain that Oliver had, so it was like, what the F is happening? And at this point, he's still a cool character. He's just not that menacing, mysterious character, because it was kind of like with Prometheus, where it's like, I don't know, it's someone that rivals him, but in the same way. So now it's like this whole mystery. And of course with Slade, it was like, we know who the heck Slade is. He's just awesome. So, different levels of why I like all the characters. And Nissa, being like the League of Assassins kind of face for a super long time before we got to see the other characters come in. She was definitely awesome. And then she's, become more and more of a hero. So I just like her. She's a cool character. But we'd love to know what you guys want to see and what theories you guys have for what we might see in the finale. And like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.